Hey, welcome to episode of Chad's Beer Reviews. We got a special guest reviewer tonight, Kate Bernot. Did I say your name right?
You did. Good job.
Can you give the viewers a quick overview of who they are, who you are, in case you don't know, or in case they don't know? I
Yes.
think you know who you are.
Some days. I don't know. Yeah. So I am a beer journalist, reporter. I'm also the director of the North American Guild of Beer Writers, which is a professional development organization for people who cover beer really in any capacity. We have the name writers in the title, but we also have quite a number of podcasters, storytellers, folks with radio shows, etc. So, really, anyone who is telling stories about beer or covering beer in a journalistic capacity is welcome to join. We have about 200 members, not just in North America, but all over the world. And it's a really great, really amazing, dynamic group of people.
Cool. Kate and I will be doing a podcast, so I'm sure there's a link up there. There's a link somewhere, so check that out. By the way, you're also BJCP certified, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm BJCP certified. I'm a certified cider professional through the American Cider Association, which is fun.
Cool.
And I live in Missoula, Montana. So if you have any viewers in the
Mhm.
vicinity of Missoula, Montana, they should hit me up to get a
Cool.
beer.
I just wanted the viewers you weren't just some random off the street, you know.
uh, no. Today I'm here in a professional capacity.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so the beer reviewing tonight or today, whatever time you're watching this, is Ayinger Celebrator, finest Bavarian Doppelbock, 6.7 ABV. I love it says strong beer, even though 6.7 isn't really that strong these days. I've used my brand new Chad's Beer Reviews Nonic pint glass, and it kind of looks like almost like a stout or a brown ale coming out of the bottle because it's like a kind of mahogany, chestnutty, brownish, reddish color. And once it's in the glass, it's like, pretty dark, but obviously, I mean, it looks like a stout right now, but I assure the viewers at home, it's like more like the color of my shirt.
It
Is that the
does
color
have
you got?
some, yeah, it definitely has some more kind of ruby undertones when you hold it to the light. I'd also love to flag how gorgeous the head retention is on this beer. I poured
Yeah.
mine, you know, minutes ago, and it is sticking around. I can very
Yeah.
easily rouse the head again when I swirl the glass. That's really lovely to see.
Let's give it a whiff. Yeah, there's that. I don't know what it is about like these German super malty lagers. When I first started getting into craft beer, it's like the first time I ever smelled it and tasted it, I'm like, oh, it's like cough medicine. But
Mm.
I think it's because probably a little bit is the alcohol, but also a lot of that is like you get like a natural kind of cherry or kind of red fruit just from the malt and probably the
Mhm.
yeast character. There's no fruit in this beer.
No, absolutely. There's a ton of for me it reads very like dried cranberry,
Yeah.
raisiny in that family.
Mhm.
Um yeah, tons of dark fruit, but also that bready character underneath is so great and to me is really the hallmark of the style is that pumpernickel bread. It smells like the bread at Outback Steakhouse specifically.
Yeah, that's a good call. I haven't thought of that, but as soon as you said that, yeah, that's like right
shout out to
there.
the shout out to the Outback Steakhouse bread.
Yeah, do a lot of deliveries for them.
Nice.
Um, Smells really good. So you wanna I before we dive in, I should say I also get like a tiny little bit of like a chocolate essence or like a hint, like suggestion of chocolate, not like Hershey syrup or a candy bar or anything. It's probably just from like
There
the chocolate malt they use or something, you know?
Yeah, there is a sweetness here that is not entirely connected to the fruit, I think. And that's like I think what you're hinting at is there is this like yeah, this idea of chocolate kind of
Yeah.
coming into the conversation, but no roast,
Yeah, I
nothing
agree.
that nothing that intense.
Maybe slightly toasty. Well,
Mhm.
we're almost 5 minutes in and we haven't taken a sip yet, so let's change that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hmm. I haven't had this in a while.
I
And
love
the
this
first
one.
thing I noticed just now, because I haven't had this in like years, is that it's actually a lot more hoppy than I remember.
Yeah, it has a very succinct finish. For such a malt forward beer, there's
Mhm.
definitely like a punctuation mark at the end of that sip. Some firm bitterness, and I think a little bit of malt astringency, like not in a bad way, not too much, but I think the sip really does dry out at the finish.
Yeah. It's like up front, it's like what we said on the nose, like really malty, fruity. I might even go as far as say rich. I think it's really, really far from cloying, but it's,
Mhm,
it's certainly noticeably sweet. I
mhm.
mean, this beer should be, but then, I mean, 6.7 ABV is not super strong, but I think like there's enough alcohol in there to just kind of like wash that sweetness away.
Yeah. Yeah, the alcohol I think also acts to kind of help dry it out at the finish. Like there's a lot of depth to this sip,
Mhm,
and yet it's not sticking around too long on the palate. It
mhm,
lifts off really nicely. I get a lot more breadiness, I think, on the tongue than I did in the aroma. Like for me, the aroma was very fruit dominant, and this is much more in balance between I think the fruit and the breadiness.
yeah, it's funny, like you mentioned the Outback Steakhouse bread, and I'm definitely tasting that,
Mhm.
but, like, without, like, the artificial ingredients and things like that, and, there's a maybe not chocolate, I mean, I mentioned chocolate and nose, but to me, it's almost like a Nutella or hazelnut kinda
Mhm.
thing. Like, maybe you had Outback Steakhouse with, put some Nutella on there. That might be similar to this.
Totally. Yeah, there is a really I think certain brown breads like pumpernickel or,
Mhm,
I mean, this isn't rye, but, like, certain darker multigrain breads have, like, that kind of seedy, toasted sunflower nutty quality, and that feels like what's happening here. I
mhm.
totally get that as well.
Yeah, I definitely have I would say like a slightly toasty, slightly baker's chocolatey aftertaste or maybe hazelnut aftertaste.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I said, like those hops, depending on how old this bottle is, I mean, there's still enough that it's enough for balance and enough to make me notice. I
Mhm.
mean, this
Mhm.
is miles away from an IPA or something like that.
But, I mean, I think their German lagers are characterized by, among other things, like, a pretty exacting application of hop bitterness, right? Like
Mhm.
a German Pilsner is characterized by like that super crisp
Yeah.
bitterness at the finish. And I think even in this malty rich of a German style, you're still gonna always get that really clean bitter punctuation mark at the end. Yeah, I really like this beer. I think there's perhaps a touch of oxidation in the bottle I'm drinking. I don't yeah, the date coding on these is,
Yeah.
totally inscrutable. Um, but so I get, the tiniest bit of a little bit of, like, a paperiness to some of these malts, but
Yeah. How do
I'm not
you
complaining. This is a great beer.
I was gonna say, like, how do you perceive oxidation? Because a lot of people get it as cardboard, but to me, it's
Mhm.
always lemon lollipop.
Oh, interesting. I perceive it yeah, I mean, in, like, really strong cases as cardboard, sometimes just, like, a papery dullness. Um, Other times and I think there's even a touch of this here, sometimes the alcohol plus high degrees of malt will give me like a that sherry-like
Yeah.
quality people talk about, and I feel like there's just the beginning stage of that in the bottle I'm drinking in particular, but it actually tastes really nice with that red fruit
Yeah.
note, so it's
I would
not even,
agree with yeah.
like,
I'd say
problematic.
that I was gonna say, how would you describe, like, the body and mouthfeel of this one?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's quite full for a lager.
Yeah, it's a lager that drinks like an ale.
Yeah, I mean, this is a medium full mouthfeel to me. It's it's very silky though. The carbonation is there, but it's quite fine.
Mhm.
So you're not noticing these huge bubbles, kind of like scrubbing that off of your tongue. It's a much more delicate carbonation, which I think lends to that
I might even go as far as say straight up full body, but at least medium full. I agree with you on that. Smooth texture, carbonation is probably put about moderately low.
Mhm.
And for 6.7 ABV, even though like that's really not that strong, I get like no alcohol presence here at all.
I think I get maybe the smallest bit of it's just if anything, a tiny warming, like, at the end of my throat, in my stomach, not as much
Mhm.
on the palate. I'm not noticing any kind of real heat there. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
well,
agree.
super well integrated. Um, I think this is a style where the alcohol is really is really necessary to the balancing act. It's not just there because we want more
Yeah.
alcohol in the style. It's really playing quite a role in drying out the beer and balancing
As
it.
far as my personal score, personal preference for this bottle that I'm holding in my hand right now. By the way, it's always case this is somebody's first time. It's always you're always reviewing the container you have in your hand, not like the product as a whole. Because sometimes you can be like, if it's super fresh off the bottling line, it's 100, and if it's been sitting in your basement for 5 years, it's like 60 or something. As far as this bottle, this is really really good. I'm gonna go pretty high on this. I'm gonna say about. I'm thinking like 8, maybe 8.5, kind of like A minus kind of beer. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I would have been at an 8 or a 9 or somewhere in between. So 8.5 sounds exactly right. Only because mine is slightly oxidized and I'd love to taste
Yeah.
maybe just a little bit of those bready malts having just a little bit of fresher character. But this is a beer I've had many times and I know what its potential is. And this is certainly not a bad bottle. And even when it's oxidized, it's pleasant. So yeah,
Mhm.
hard to really argue with this. I adore this
All right.
beer.
Well, I guess that about wraps it up for this episode. So thanks to Kate. One side. Leo wants to say hi. Thanks to Kate for joining, and be sure to check out my podcast with her, which I'm sure is linked down there somewhere. Uh, so thanks for joining, and cheers. And I'll see you in just a minute.
Cheers. Thanks, Chad.
Yep. Bye.
Somebody brewed it, Chad just reviewed it. Thanks for watching Chad's Beer Reviews.
Trust me, the next episode will be a lot better.